Welcome back, Conservation Nation. We are your hosts. My name is Hannah Higgins, and this is Mary Gustafson.
Today is our very last podcast episode, and we have two very special guests. We have Mary Stark, and joining us online is Kayla.
I've been at Central a long time, and I love teaching here. I'm always so inspired by the students. And thanks to Anya Butt, who always has these wonderful opportunities for faculty from all different disciplines to come and hear environmental science projects. I heard Kayla, and I think it was December 23, so 2 years ago. And so I heard her program and I got so excited. So I asked her to come and talk to two of my classes that spring. And you came twice, and we went to Big Rock Park twice, as I recall, too.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess one of the reasons I love being at Central is that you have that opportunity to connect with other faculty members, but also students. And I love those kinds of collaborations. And so even though I've been here so many years, Kayla's been one of my teachers with connecting to nature and giving me all kinds of ideas, not only for books, but just also inspiration about connecting with the natural world. So I'm so glad that you could be with us, Kayla.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you, guys. I graduated from Central this spring, so spring of 2025. I majored in environmental science. And yeah, I'm really grateful for all the opportunities I had and for that connection I had with Mary and your classes. And that was all very life-changing stuff. And but yeah, I really am interested in nature and nature connection and how people and kind of the earth relate and all sorts of stewardship, all sorts of things. So yeah.
And what are you currently doing?
Right now, I'm working for the Forest Preserves of Winnebago County, Illinois. So right now I'm in maintenance. So I do a lot of taking care of the preserves, making things look good, and making sure things are accessible for the public, for the taxpayers. So I sometimes operating equipment like skid loaders and chainsaws and all sorts of other stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Wow, that's really diversified from even the Iowa Natural Heritage internship that you did. And didn't you get to have a prairie fire there recently? Help with that?
Yes, last week we were doing controlled burns. The burn season started last week officially because it was wet enough finally so that the fires didn't go like crazy. So I don't know how many acres it was, but it was one of my favorite preserves. It's remnant Dolomite Hill Prairie and a lot of other interesting ecosystems there. So it's fun to be able to protect places and help restore places that you love. So that was pretty cool.
That's wonderful. In action.
Kayla, don't you also do you still do photography?
I do. I just started that back up as well.
Yep. Oh, they're so amazing. Like, I don't know how you do it, but the way you capture so cool. Nature's actually unreal. Like your Iceland photos, like.
Oh, aren't those stunning?
Yeah. Yeah, if you send us those, you can display your beautiful art.
Yeah, you guys totally can feel free to use as many pictures as you want. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I always appreciate that stuff.
Yeah, and that's another way that we connected. She took the LAS 410 then in the fall after we'd already collaborated a couple of times, 4 times with classes. And you also had a survey that you created. I think that was part of your senior environmental science project that you shared with your colleagues and with Anya and that. And then, so she was doing that, but then she took LAS 410. The photography came in really well. We did some descriptions of her photographs too. It was really fun to see. And then I asked Kayla if she wanted to help with a grant. And Kathy Haustein, who's a professor of chemistry and creative writing here at Central, retired, but back to have fun. And so we wrote a grant, and we worked with the Pella schools. We had 3 facets of it. We had the connecting to nature with citizens, so programs at Big Rock Park. And Kayla did 1 or 2 on photography and also bird language, and she buttressed Russ Benedict with that one. So we had the dynamic duo of those 2 in that. So we had all these programs, and you did one just on photography for a lot of teenagers, as I recall, coming in. So that was one facet of it. And then another facet was going to retirement centers, reaching out to people of different ages. So Kayla, how many did you do of those? Maybe 8?
Man. Feels like it.
Yeah.
There were quite a few. It was really cool to do that. They all kind of blurred together now in my head, but there's probably at least 5.
Yeah, well, you had 3 different programs, and the directors could select which program they wanted, what they thought their communities would most enjoy, and so forth. And sometimes, you started out with the um, memory care, and it was a small group, and we didn't quite know how that would go. But one of the residents, even though he couldn't remember a lot of things, knew all the bird songs, and he knew cardinal songs and morning dove songs, and so forth. And then the director emailed us asking Kayla to send her slide presentation because one lady said she really wanted to watch that over and over again to remember and to connect. So that's how we started. And then lots of different places. That was at the cottages, and then at Fairhaven, and then also at Independence Village. And that. So she had 3 different programs, and they selected. And I'm so she was really part of our anchor for this grant. So that was the second part. The third part was working with Appella Schools, and we aligned with the 4th grade classroom. Their teachers wanted to come to Central. Actually, their field trip to Living History Farms was canceled, so they reached out to us, and a former grad asked if they could come here. So that meant aligning all the scientists. So Kayla, Dr. Benedict, Dr. Mena, Dr. Budd, Dr. Polensky, Marla Mertz, the Marion County Naturals, all these folks. We could align them. I don't know how we did this. It was April 25th, 2025. We got everybody aligned. And so all of these 170 fourth graders and their teachers came to Central and caught snow. Dr. Benedict regaled them with bat fun facts, and that was just amazing, just amazing. Just had those students caught in the wonder of bats. And then we dispersed into smaller groups. And so I think, Kayla, you did one on birds for that presentation. And
Yep.
So all of the students could be on campus with these small groups as well as with that beginning one. And then we shuffled off, well, they bussed off to Big Rock Park for the rest of the afternoon, and we did nature walks. Well, that was so popular that they asked to do that again. So, Kayla, I haven't even told you this. Kathy and I wrote another grant, Nature for All Ages, and it was just accepted by the Pella Community Foundation for another $5,000.
Wow.
And those 3 audiences again, citizens at the park, the senior citizens, and then the 4th graders and that. So we're just thrilled that this is happening. So Kayla, you can see Kayla and I have a lot of collaboration here. And so then after she took the 410, I think you did an independent study at that point, or a couple of independent studies, because we just enjoyed learning from each other, and there's so much momentum here. So then that's when she did these brochures too, which was part of the grant. You can have a look at those. And almost all of these are Kayla's photographs. And I'm going to submit it for consideration for Synaptic because it's so well done. She has not only her folders, but this invitation to the audience. And we tried to make it accessible for 4th graders. So they all received one of these, and all their teachers did too. And then just some fun facts that maybe you wouldn't find in a nature guide or online that Kayla included here, and direct engagement and so forth. I love that picture of the raccoon. And then if other folks submitted photos, she gave credit to them. And then this QR code. I'm so thrilled still by this QR code that you could tap into, and the teachers could look then for the learning goals for the 4th graders for the next generation science standards. And they could tap into that and then plug this in, so to speak. But there are so many other resources on there. Could you talk just a little bit about that, Kayla? All the guides that you had there?
Yeah, so I have multiple nature connection mentoring guides, which if you don't know a whole lot about nature connection mentoring, it's basically trying to use a lot of indigenous cultural tools and things that we used to do that are kind of becoming atrophied in our culture. So, for example, grandma takes grandson outside, teaches him about a certain plant, or says, "Hey, what is that turtle doing over there?" And then the kid goes and it learns, and they go on their journeys, and they're kind of, this relationship with nature forms at a young age. That's kind of disappearing, and we're seeing that's linked to a lot of the issues going on in the world, as far as mental health, physical health, but also planetary health. So a lot of what I've learned about this comes from John Young. In fact, most of what I've learned comes from John Young, but also Robin Wall Kimmerer and a ton of other authors. So basically, I tried to synthesize most of the information I learned from them into these mentoring guides that were more accessible and applicable for people, just any, it could be any family, any group of people that just kind of want to do this stuff but don't want to go through all of that information, because there's a lot. There's a lot of research out there too that can be kind of esoteric, so kind of making all that accessible. I had one that was kind of for Marion County. I was going to make one for photography, so connecting through photography. I haven't really fully worked on that yet, but I should start that. And some other ones, so. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of parents and teachers have told me they've been using those resources, distilling a lot of that information in accessible ways. And one of the examples is the deer ears that we did at Big Rock Park and that Kayla created. So I brought in, I think, a copy of that too with Kate Canny's response. Do you remember that? With, yes, and that. So Kaylee, how about this? Can you tell us your inspiration for deer ears?
I think that one, it probably either comes from John Young or Michael Cohen. A lot of these people that facilitate nature connection. So it's based on going outside and not just doing simply recreation or education. And you're trying to be more open with your senses and kind of experience things in a different way that we're not used to. And so it's kind of a framework to get your mind and your nervous system to listen further and pretend that you are a deer, and trying to expand your hearing to all these things going on in the environment that typically we hear, but we don't register, we don't think about or notice when we're outside. So that's kind of the point of deer ears, and that over time, if that becomes a practice, it changes your relationship and what you notice and kind of how you respond and interact with nature. So, yeah.
Yeah, it goes along with that article that you found how listening more closely can save the planet. So it's that personal connection of how you resonate with it, but then it has that rippling impact of saving the planet when we start to become more in tune with our senses. Because I think some of these authors have talked about the sensory deprivation. We also have that for children with Richard Louv, the nature deficit disorder, and so forth. Some of the books that we discussed in our independent study in that. But I've been so thrilled that classes have connected with it too. And then last summer, Anya and Russ Benedict and I had this workshop on climate change and helping all of us students be more resilient. I think maybe Russ mentioned that when he was interviewed. So we did this little activity, and then Kate Canny Smith is the one who did this artwork with the deer ears and a poem that is just powerful. And I won't read it now, but I did read it to the class. She gave me permission to share with anybody who might want to hear about the deer ears and that. So it's been really inspirational, Kayla. And I wanted you to know we're continuing your legacy here.
Thank you. It's very good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so that kind of goes along with the question I wanted to ask. So one of my friends she's taking environmental science with Anya, and I think she's a communications major, so she's never done anything like it. And she was having trouble because she's like, I just don't care about living sustainably. I just don't really care. And so how can, because I obviously immediately, I just had a connection, I care. So how can we get people to care who think they're just don't have a connection with nature, just don't see the connection between what we do and how it affects everything around us. How do we get people to care about this?
Well, I think Kayla's doing that through writing and also
Mhm.
photography, for instance, and then these programs. What would you say, Kayla? I have some
Yeah,
responses.
that was so when I started junior seminar of environmental science, and Anya kind of said, make a project that's sustainability wise, does something with sustainability. And I said, okay, so I could do a simple project and that would be fine. But then I started thinking about the root causes of why we even have to do this project in the first place and what's going on. And somehow or another, it got to people don't care. And I always, when I grew up, I was outside, I cared. And so I was thinking, what's going on? And so there are a lot of people, even at Central, that they might think that they're connected because to us, connection is, as John Young says, it's the connection of your phone to the Wi-Fi, for example. So we don't thoroughly understand what connection is, and we have a lot of like education and recreation going on, but that's a different modeling system. So for me, and that's why the survey got created, is to see, okay, what's actually going on here. The people that have that connection, whether it's spiritual, emotional, what have you, over on average, they are more likely to be pro-environmental and do things that are beneficial for the environment, or at least be cautious of their footprint. And the people that weren't very connected, you could see that they didn't really care as much about what happened and what they did. And they're often the people that are littering don't care what happens. So um, there are a lot of ways you can fix that. To me, the best is just connection and kind of trying to bring connection into schools, into especially like preschools, elementary schools, younger ages. We need to get that back in our culture. John Young, for instance, doesn't even acknowledge that we are a culture. The West America, he doesn't see it as culture because to him, culture means to cultivate connection with yourself, others, and nature, and we don't really do that. So he called us a society or a pseudo culture.
Oh,
But so bringing connection back, having connection mentoring, um, all that sort of thing, I think would be the best way to help environmental issues. You can do the surface things, like this environmental movement thus far has done a lot of on the surface, which is important, but if you don't address the root issues, what's going on in the individual brain to the whole culture, the whole consciousness, collective consciousness, then you probably will not thoroughly fix the problem.
Mm-hmm. Won't have that planetary health in that
Yeah.
way. Well, I think we do the best we can, and we celebrate little victories and so forth. In my classes, like this 410, I've taught in different versions of 410 since it started in 2012, and it's just sort of evolved. But this Sense of Wonder paper, it's inspired by Rachel Carson, has been one that's been a constant throughout. So trying to have the writers, the college writers, think about something in nature that is compelling for them, and then from there build on that curiosity. So then we always work with the seventh graders here in town because they also are looking at the 17 global goals for sustainability from the UN. They're looking at their passions, and their teacher Kristen Schultz is told our ed majors in class, have your students write with passion, find something that they're interested in. Passion teaching is what she calls it, and so forth. And so we've continued that. And the seventh graders inspire us because they raise money at their concession stand to contribute to causes that align with those goals. So, they've given over 30,000 in the last 4 or 5 years to different local, national, and international causes. And then the college seniors present a paper, or they do a presentation, then they write a paper for us, but a presentation on their sense of wonder. Like, you got a shout out from those seventh graders.
Yeah, they thought mine was fun.
Yeah, she had a camera on the pandas, and they just thought that was terrific to see that.
Yeah, well, because in my paper I talked a lot about like how and I talked about like in media and like seeing animal, because like a lot of people are iffy about zoos, but I was like, but seeing the animal in the zoo, like if you like you're gonna build a connection with it, and you're like you want to help, if that animal's endangered, you want to help save it. Like it just builds a deeper connection when like you're up close with it, when like you care about it.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, we need to care about more than just like these like fun animals. Like we need to care about all of them. But
Yeah.
I think that's really important. The like
Mhm.
Oh, I
the
agree.
deep caring about it.
Yeah, that deep caring. Because I think Dr. Benedict talks about that all the time too. You're going to try to save what you love. And even as he says, if an organism doesn't look conventionally attractive, once you find out how the facial structure of the bat works, then you just kind of fall in love with the artistry of it and so forth. So yeah, and it was so much fun seeing all of our class then. And I think when you presented, it was katydids, because that's one of your passions, and how we can learn from katydids and so forth. So I'll just say one more thing, and we have so many possibilities to talk about here. But I've been teaching children's lit now again for the last 15 years or so, and I've always interspersed a unit on ecology or the environment so that they're reading Little House on the Prairie and learning about prairie. And it's a trend that you'll see even Pele Christian schools uses this. They teach science through the literature and that. So it's a very viable approach. But I always think if we can, as Kayla said, if we can address young people with these issues, particularly if they're not used to going outside or they don't have the mentors, but if they're teachers or advocates, that can be a powerful impact on young people too. So we've had lots of success in children's lit with that sub theme of ecology. And then I think many of them have said that they've tried to implement that because they realize the importance of it. And I teach a 300 level literature, environmental literature for children and young adults, that we really look at the nature deficit disorder and some of the studies and the research out there that for lifelong health, connecting to nature is one of the outstanding ways that we can help people for lifetime learning and survival and so forth, and resilience, back to that. In fact, one of the articles that Kayla found that we used in the grants, Nature Connection, Providing a Pathway from Personal to Planetary Health, John Zielinski and that group, that's just full of information. I think it's 2 years old now, but continual research is showing how important it is to have nature and nature connections, and we do the best we can. I never try to force it on people if they are resistant in that, but I think taking care of yourself is most important. And environmental science majors, as you are, you're really connected to the earth in that. But I like that you brought that up because that's a big issue.
I feel like it's really hard to get people like wanting to go outside. Like it's one thing to teach them in a classroom, but especially in the United States, like people aren't really going to care, I feel like, until they feel the effects of it on themselves. And so I feel like it is really important to actually get people outside, but it's also kind of a hard thing to do. Like I feel like you have to do it from a young age and then keep going throughout. And like when you're in college, like I don't know how many other majors get to go on field trips outside.
Yeah.
Like probably barely any. Probably biology and environmental science mainly.
We try to go as often as we
Yeah.
can
Yeah, that's good.
in that, or even outside of the building, to the garden or something like that.
Yeah.
But that was one of your main goals too, was to get people outside. So if you build it into a class, whether it's college seniors or fourth graders, then it's more feasible perhaps in that way.
Like obviously it's important to have like specific classes for like environmental science, but like I think, and like sustainability, but like including just like little things like in everything, like in an education class, like in our LAS is so like important because it's like it's not just its own subject. Like
No,
you can put it with everything.
absolutely. It's really across the curriculum.
Yeah, I was going to say it's definitely a challenge now because if you look at what's causing the disconnect in the first place, I think it was, I'm trying to remember the article from the UK, but I think it was Thomas Berry or something, 2023. He had this wheel of disconnection and it had 3 rings in it. And the outer ring had all of the little tiny things that are kind of causing the disconnection. There's countless, but we have technology up the wazoo that's making people more interested in their phones than real life. So people are living vicariously through a screen. If you need food, you go to the grocery store. If you need water, you go to your sink. So there's not a reliance on nature anymore. And there's all these ways in which people don't think they need nature, don't know how to have that connection. And just it's hard to cut through that and incentivize people to go outside and just quiet their minds and stop thinking for a while and just be there. But it's a challenge, but it definitely needs to be instilled at some point.
Mhm. Yeah, by the way, we were talking in class today about AI, and I won't give you the whole scenario, but one of the students said that AI is such a drain on energy. And I remember Dr. Butt told us that at this workshop that, oh, it's just astronomical, the use of energy for AI. And then another person in our class said, and what's the benefit if this AI can get us connected to coral reefs? Like, it's not directly, it's using all this energy, instead of just going to see the reefs or go contribute to their well-being and so forth. So yeah, you have to really kind of dig into the backstory and the whole context, I think. So one other facet I was going to mention is in all the courses and the presentations I've given and papers written with colleagues, I often work with scientists because I just love the collaboration and learning from them and trying to take science classes so I can be a little more independent. But we always focus on hope because I think it can be overwhelming when you think of the problems like AI sort of out of control now and what's going to happen in that. So going to, for instance, the Earthshot Prize that we've talked about in class, where people are contributing money, maybe not here in the United States, but globally, they're, like Prince William and the the foundation give $1 million pound prize, so it's a little bit more in American dollars, for 5 different groups for solving problems in the world, such as air and pollution and the oceans and climate change and so forth. And I find that so inspiring that people elsewhere, if not here, are concerned about the well-being of the world and the biodiversity issues and so forth. And even scientists such as David Attenborough, who's been studying nature for many years, British ecologist, thinking that we have hope here because of the momentum and the passion and the power. And maybe that concern, as Prince William said, it's the Earthshot Prize, so we're halfway through it. It's 10 years, and he started in 2020. And so that tipping point with climate change and so forth is what he's addressing. But I'm just really excited about that. And I've been looking at pages, because of my age, seniors who are concerned about the environment. Because I always think, oh, what a deal. We're just saying, push it back down to the young. You take care of it. We messed up. So these are all senior citizens who are trying to be activists in some way, even if it's a little thing like your yard. Like I showed them pictures of my yard, Kayla, just that goes along with that book about nature's best hope is cultivating environments and ecosystems in your yard where you have some control. And then the benefits are just so astounding. When I walk in that gate, it's just sanctuary, there's life. It's just amazing. It's just a win-win. So I think, whatever we can do to have hope is something that will help the individual as well as the planet.
I think that's especially your project with the seniors. I feel like a lot of the juniors are doing environmental education with like young people with like children, elementary education, which is really important. But like I feel like the seniors are like neglected, but like they like were there before lots of technology took over, like, and like they probably really want to learn about it. Like,
oh yeah,
I bet like that's such an amazing, like I wouldn't have even thought to do that, but now I'm like, yeah. Like,
and they're really clamoring for intellectual programs. That's why Kayla was so busy in that, because they want, and it would recall memories they had. Um, can you talk a little bit about that too, Kayla, since you gave these programs? I went with her 1 or 2 times and then she just took it from there.
Yeah, I basically would do a presentation on a topic or a couple of little topics, and then I would have questions throughout or at the end to kind of just see what's going on and what their experiences were. So there were times where I'd ask them kind of reflect on some of the sounds you'd hear in nature locally, so Midwestern sounds, like it could be a train in the distance, or it could be a barred owl, a great horned owl, it could be deer doing whatever. So stuff like that, it kind of gets them to go back into those memories and feel how they did growing up, and that goes down to nervous system regulation and all of these different tirades I could talk about, tangents. So that was one of the really fun things to do. And then sometimes I would play audio. A lot of people have gone out and recorded certain sounds, and I put a playlist together and I'd play audio from that just to see, do you remember any of these sounds, or how do they make you feel? And I did a lot with just sounds, the soundscape, and then lots of other things with pictures and whatnot. So, but yeah, it was fun.
And yeah, and we're really continuing with this, Kayla, too, because we're trying to work with the Pella Hospital. We did work with the Pella Wellness Committee too, because of nature as healing. So what we see in many of these citizens in the retirement centers is that there's a sense physiologically, as well as emotionally and spiritually, of these connections and so forth. So it's really rejuvenating in that fashion. At Fairhaven East, didn't you say one person hadn't been to Big Rock in 50 years, but they
Yeah,
wanted
there was one that wanted to do a picnic, like a lunch picnic thing, and said that she hadn't been there in 50 years. And so I don't know if they ended up going to Big Rock, but I
they
don't
were just
remember if they did. Did they?
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
because they didn't get to walk as much as they
Okay.
wanted, that just with mobility issues and that. But just being outside and listening to the birds, and that was just rejuvenating for them too. So we're going to continue with that and work with the Pella Hospital, the Pella Regional Center, because of the wellness connections. Like sometimes when we're reading the book Teaching the Trees, where they talk about the Japanese wood bathing and the impact on health and so forth, students will say, well, do the physicians at Pella Regional ask people just to go walk at Big Rock because it's so close, and so forth? So that's one of my goals, is to kind of pursue that. Could we have more alignment and more synergy and more energy moving forward? I mean, just locally, community based, individual based, but those ripple effects that could perhaps help save the planet in small ways.
Do you want to talk about like what? Because you're an elementary education teacher. Do you want to talk about like? Do you focus on talking about sustainability in the environment, like, and teaching teachers to teach that too, or like
Yes,
how do
that's
you
what the
kind
children's
of
lit class
yeah,
is.
that's
It's all
children's lit.
future
Okay.
elementary teachers. And even in my methods class, we do, for secondary teachers, we do an assignment that's authentic in terms of ecology. In that class, you're asked to look at a world problem. And so they look at sustainability issues, and then they have to come up with lesson plans that will address those for different audiences. And yeah, so I think it's another way to try to integrate some of this mindset into future people of all ages in that way. And then even in the teaching writing class, we do a lot of writing about nature and that. And Kayla, you had the teaching writing class out at Big Rock too, as I recall, when we
Mm-hmm.
went. Yeah, Kayla was across the curriculum helping me all the time.
Well, I appreciated the opportunities, Mary. Thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure. Because I think it's that joy of people appreciating the natural world that is sustaining. And you have that quote from John Young on your phone about the benefits. So do you happen to have that?
So this is a quote I stole from it was an interview, it was a YouTube video, but he was being interviewed by this woman named Maddie Harland, who does stuff with Nature Connection too. And she asked him what happens when people do genuinely connect with nature. And John Young said, I think they become a better version of themselves. They're happier, they're more vital, they have a deeper ability to listen unconditionally to one another. People feel really safe with them. They have deep empathy, and they surface their own understanding of who they are. They become much more helpful, service-oriented, interdependent, and conservation-minded. They become responsible environmental people, and not because laws tell them to, but because intrinsically they know this is what they need, or what we need. They have they have a great wonder for life. They develop a big capacity to love. They get the gift of a quiet mind from listening to the birds and being connected to the stars, the wind, and the rain. Their creativity really flows, and they become more poetic, more vibrant and more wonderful. They feel part of the family of the universe. So he kind of goes on and on and on like that, and basically he's talking about the attributes of connection, which he, I think, has at least 8 that he thought of, and it's just being more vital, having more capacity for listening, for love, for wonder, curiosity, patience, creativity. A lot of these attributes that we're seeing kind of slowly disappear a lot in our culture, in our society. And it kind of brings those back. So that's basically what he was going for.
Yeah, and that aligns with another book. Dr. Mena said they heard the author at an environmental conference in Des Moines about the nature fix, how that could be a solution to some of the problems and systemic issues that we have in society, American society today, too. But I love that quote by John Young. And I think, spending time with Kayla was just such a blissful time, those 2 years. Uh, and the momentum and the inspiration to think of other ways to connect and to help other people if they're interested. You just want to make it available, but then people, of course, can decide how they want to proceed. But uh, there's just a lot of synergy in that community, in that. Just like I feel right now with the 4 of us. Oh, I'm so excited.
I have a question for you. So have you always kind of had an interest in teaching about the environment, or was there something that like sparked or something that happened in the world that kind of made you start leaning towards that more?
Well, as I tell the children's lit class, when I was reading Charlotte's Web when I was a child and I met Wilbur, I gave up eating meat because how could you eat Wilbur? And I always tell the elementary majors, now be sure you help your young people differentiate reality and fantasy and so forth. But no, I think I've always had sort of this connection, just as Kayla was saying, to the natural world and so forth. And when I went as an undergrad to study Thoreau, oh my, I went to the woods to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and not when I came to die discover that I had not lived. I thought, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And unlike Emerson, who also wrote about nature, Thoreau actually did try to commune with the natural world. So, and I did my dissertation on Whitman's Leaves of Grass, where nature is the teacher, and my first conference I gave was in Wales, and that was the topic, nature as teacher. So, what a delight all these years now to be able to play with this literature and material and just learn from others, as I have from Kayla and from all of you in the seminar now too. And that. So, yeah, I guess I've always been connected, fortunately. And by the way, my mother lived with me. My mother was from Scotland, so when my father passed away, she came to Pella, and she was the one who really inspired me with the yard, because she said, Mary, it just seems so strange that people go out and mow these yards. So my yard is a national wildlife sanctuary in the front and the back, and a pollinator habitat and a bird sanctuary, everything we could. But my mother had a different perspective about, she was, looking at those small little cottage gardens and that, and then the expanse of the moors and all of that. And this concept of mowing yard was really foreign to her. And I thought, well, you know what? We'll just try to invite other life in here. And so I've been really fortunate with family too.
Great.
This is up, but like, is mowing, like, I guess I never thought about, like, well, I should ask Rachel, because I think that was her sense of wonder paper was on grass.
Yeah, hers is on grass, which is terrific.
But is this like, is mowing like an American thing or like a Western thing? Like, because I guess I've never thought about like.
Kayla's shaking her head in affirmation there.
I think it's probably not only in the West now, but I'm pretty sure when colonization happened, it's kind of just something that got brought over with the idea of having land and having things look a certain way and kind of bragging about how much space you have in your lawn and all this, and kind of evolved to be that. And there might have been more of a purpose back in the day for mowing than there is now. I once read about it, and I've forgotten most of what I read since, but.
Well, I can help a little bit there, because I think at least in Iowa and the tallgrass prairie areas, they would mow so that the prairie fires wouldn't come close to the house, so they get rid of the thatch and that. But quite a few of the landscape architects, like in the big cities, Homestead and others, for instance, had that concept, and I think then it was manifest throughout the states. But if you go out west, you don't have the manicured lawns that we do here in Iowa, for instance, and that. And by the way, Rachel, she did a beautiful paper and presentation about the Kentucky bluegrass, the history of that being brought over, and then she brought in the tallgrass prairie as a contrast in that. And one of her goals, which I really am fascinated by, is looking at things that we just overlook all the time. You know, the backstories of this and that. And so that perspective, I think, is such a healthy one in that way.
Did you want to talk about the book you brought, or?
Oh, well, I really like poetry. Naeem Wanyai says, poetry is sort of a way to gain peace in the world for oneself and for others. And so Ada Limon just came out with this. She's the 24th Poet Laureate of the United States. And so this is a collection of people writing about the natural world, getting out and observing and seeing and experiencing, being mindful and all of that. And then in the introduction, I read this before we started, because nature is not a place to visit. Nature is who we are. And I've always encouraged people to play with quotations as epigraphs in their papers and that. And Kayla used that quote, as I recall, in one of hers. Was it about the owls, or do you remember which one it was?
It was probably the owls.
Yeah.
That seems right. That matches the vibe for the owls paper.
Yeah. And yeah, it does. It does. And she wrote a place journal about Iceland that's just phenomenal too, and that. But I think, poetry, any inspiration that we find, we've been doing quite a bit in class with art because we've got an art major in there too. How that storytelling can help maybe awaken people to the natural world in different ways, and by extension, then to take care of it. That yes, this is something we want to prize and treasure and so forth. So thank you for asking. Appreciate that.
So we've kind of hit all of our stuff. Is there anything specific you guys wanted to add to or mention? Or you could. We have talked about a lot, so.
Well,
I don't
want to
really
give
have anything.
Yeah, I was going to just give a shout out to Anya Butt again, because she has these seminars and invites all of us to come and hear them from juniors and seniors. And as I say, I met Kayla through the juniors seminar and then was able to work with her all the time she was here. But I love these podcasts now, because I just started listening to the last one you did, because you've done two on juniors and seniors.
Yeah, we did a seniors and now a juniors.
Yeah. And one of the people was saying, for instance, she isn't an ed major, so looking at those science goals, she wasn't quite sure how to ferret it out, but her passion was there, and it was really cool in that. But I love that, because if we can't attend when Anya invites us, when they're scheduled, like I had a final scheduled at the same time Kayla was presenting last spring and that. But this is a way for us to communicate and share the joy, and it's just really neat to see what people are doing. And Anya's been such a force for good and for this environment here. She's one of my heroes. So shout out to Anya and all my friends out there and scientists that take care of things, and other colleagues like Kate Canny Smith, who's in theater, who did this. And it's just wonderful to have the community and to learn from students. I'm always learning from the students.
Yeah, I think I could second that with a shout out to Mary, and thank you for all of the experience and all the opportunities, and to Anya and Dr. B and everyone I learned from at Central. So that was a big part of why any of this happened at all. So
yeah. And now we have to continue. Now I'm going to see if we can connect more often, because I wish you could make a little trip to the retirement centers. They wanted you to come back so much. And now we have grants again, so that's a win-win. But yeah, just thinking ahead in terms of your future too, and all your contributions. If we go back to that synergy and the delight of seeing people connected to the natural world. Well, I showed I showed 2 pictures of these baby barred owls that had been to my deck a couple of years ago. They came in June, and then they were back again in July, at least that I was able to photograph and that. And that was such a magical time, I'd gone swimming early in the morning, came back, and there on the deck, I saw one, and then there was another one up on a dead branch of the tree. So, of course, I emailed family and friends and everything. And my 9-year-old twin niece and nephew said, "Oh, Aunt Mary, did you get any magical mail?" And another friend had given me an invitation to Hogwarts, if you know the Harry Potter series.
Yeah.
So I said, "Yes, they delivered this." And I sent them a picture of it. And I said, "They also brought some for you." So seeing their delight when they got to open those invitations. But I think my yard, and I'm right in the middle of town, but it invited these owls in anyway. And I just felt so delighted to have that experience. So that's kind of my fun fact. I think having nature, or even in the city and surrounded by homes and manicured lawns and so forth, nature's going to prevail and appear every once in a while, which makes it so magical. Do you have a fun fact then?
I kind of like the last part you said about, you can find it anywhere. And a lot of the nature connection mentoring lingo sounds very complicated and like, how can I do that? And how does this even happen? But you can do it with your house plant. Like, you can do activities to strengthen your connection just by sitting quietly and noticing. And you don't need waterfalls and a scenic vista. You can do it anywhere. So that's kind of an important point to nail, is having that accessible to everybody and having them think, oh, I can do this. And yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Benedict talks about that too. People often think they have to go to Colorado or Iceland, but it's right here. It's all around us. And I love your connection with the houseplant too.
Thank you for listening to our last episode of Conservation Nation. We're going to miss making these, but make sure to always go outside and enjoy the day. Take a look around and just take everything in. Thank you for listening.